Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of RocketLab Stronger Together, launching from Wallops, Virginia in the USA. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad, and we're glad to have you joining us for our live launch coverage today. Here at TOP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're going to be with you as we count down T-minus 21 minutes, 47 seconds, and counting until launch. We had a little bit of a delay earlier today. We've got a 2-hour launch window, and as always, you can learn more about today's launch by heading over to tlpnetwork.com and checking out our detailed mission briefing. We'll drop the link in the chat as well, and that's where you can learn more about today's vehicle, rocket, the payload, and everything about the Electron rocket. We're waiting for RocketLab to begin their live coverage, and then, of course, we'll listen into that. Right off the bat, though, we want to say if you are over on the eastern seaboard and outside and have clear skies, you may have the opportunity to be able to see today's launch with your own eyes. So definitely take some time and review the... Pause here for a moment while this maybe loads the... Bear with me one second, everybody. We do have the view map that we wanted to show you about where you'll be able to see today's launch, but it does not want to show. So if you guys have questions, as always, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live throughout today's stream. There we go. This is the view chart for today's mission, along with the launch trajectory of the Electron rocket. The orange color, that is when the rocket will have been in flight for 2 to 3 minutes, and then of course as it gets closer to the pad. So if you're anywhere from Pittsburgh to Trenton to Philadelphia to Raleigh to Charleston, you have a clear sky, you may have the opportunity of seeing Electron fly here today. And if you do, take photos and videos, tag us over on social media, or you can drop those in on our Discord. That's where the TLP community hangs out. We'd love to see those. We might be able to bring up a few of those on stream. If you post it to Twitter, just make sure you're tagging us TLPN_official so we can see those and try to bring them up on stream as we now count down L-minus 20 minutes and counting until launch. We are following along for updates with RocketLab. They should be getting underway here momentarily, and then we'll have a view from the pad. Lots of you just joining in. We're glad to have you all here. People tuning in all over the world. It's great to have you. We've got Sir William in Florida. Candice is in Tennessee. Justice is in California. We got Marco in Italy. We got Blatton, I hope I said that right, in Australia. Michael's in Ohio. Carl's in Florida. Ricky's in Tennessee. We got Jimitrice, sorry if I said that wrong, in Greece. Anna's in Miami. We got Claudia in Honduras. Great to have you join us from all over the world. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. As well as make sure you're subscribing to our new channel, the Launchpad News. That's where our space news updates and exclusive one-on-one interviews come out. The link should be in the description for that as well. So 2 places to follow along with everything space as we get into a very busy era of space exploration. But we're glad to have you joining us here today for the launch of Electron Stronger Together. Launch window was running from 6 until 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're currently targeting 6:38 p.m. For launch. Things have been continuing well. The weather was looking good. 95% go for launch for today's mission. Catching up on some questions in the chat. Great having you here. Make sure you're tagging us at the launch pad in those. Marcine's asking, hopefully it goes better than the launch this afternoon. Yeah, if you notice, we went live for a sounding rocket launch out of Sweden earlier today. Unfortunately, at the T-minus 10-minute mark, it did scrub due to wind, but we're hoping we'll have better luck today with an orbital Electron rocket. Stealth mode, what's the status of the 3D printed rocket? I'm assuming you're meaning the Relativity one. Currently, they're targeting a launch attempt on March 22nd, but we're keeping an eye on that timeline to see when we will actually be able to have the next launch attempt. As always, it is launch day, so one thing we also wanted to bring up is that you can get 10% off of everything over on the TLP store, the launchpad.store. We'll drop that link in the chat. That's where you can get your Lunar and Martian return sample bags. You can get your sequence shirts. We've got a bunch of different collections, but if you would actually like, for the first time, we're super excited about this, you can get a metal print of today's rocket. We have one of our TLP rocket chasers on site today. Thank you, Rocket Lab, for inviting us. So definitely check that that out. Electron is vertical. We've got in a bunch of different sizes. Global shipping is available. Promo code LaunchK gets you 10% off of that. We're working on getting more prints up on launch days or right after a launch, as we have our Rocket Chaser station now around the world bringing you the best coverage of everything we can. But there is a lot of different stuff on the shop: stickers, shirts, jackets, bags, water bottles. Definitely take a moment and check that out. All of that goes back in to helping us bring you the best possible coverage of everything space, and we appreciate that. And glad to have our Rocket Chasers out on site. It sounds like it was a quiet day at the press site, so we thank Rocket Lab for letting us be one of just only a couple people at Wallops for today's flight. As we count down now, L 16 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. Waiting for any updates from Rocket Lab on the count. Their stream should get up and running here in the next couple of minutes. Things have continued to progress well. The sun is starting to set now in Virginia, and they are now just at that 16.5-minute mark. You can see their stream is getting underway, so we'll listen in to Rocket Lab Mission Control for an update on the status of the payload and the rocket. We'll be staying live throughout the launch, so keep sending in your questions by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live as we continue through today's stream. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the like button, share it out as we count down T-minus 15 minutes, 5 seconds, and counting until liftoff of Electron Stronger Together from Rocket Lab Launch Complex 2 at Wallops Island in Virginia in the United States. Shannon's asking, is this Virginia? Yes, this is Virginia. And Denise says, the launch still on? It is. That is what we're doing. Let's listen in to Rocket Lab Mission Control.
And welcome to the live broadcast for our 34th Electron mission, a launch we've called Stronger Together for our mission partners Capella Space. We're bringing you a live view of Electron on the pad as we prepare for our second launch ever from our dedicated launch pad in Virginia at Launch Complex 2 on Wallops Island. My name is Felicity Powell.
And I'm Likita Satosala, and we're so glad to have you with us. We're about 16 minutes away from our target liftoff time of 1800 Eastern Local Time or 2300 UTC. It's hard to believe it's been just over 6 weeks since our very first launch from our dedicated launch pad at Wallops. On January 23rd, we launched to space from LC2 for our customer Hawkeye 360 and delivered their satellites to orbit with pinpoint accuracy. Those 3 Cluster 6 satellites are already providing useful Earth observation data from their new home in space. That mission marked a new era of dedicated small launch from U.S. soil for satellite operators. With the support of Virginia Space, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and NASA Wallops Flight Facility, we built Rocket Lab Launch Complex 2 to serve the responsive needs of the future and to offer ultimate flexibility for our customers, enabling them to launch from one of 3 pads across 2 continents. Combined, there's the possibility of more than 130 launch opportunities every year.
We also operate an integration and control facility within the Wallops Research Park, a short drive from the pad itself. The facility is home to payload integration cleanrooms, vehicle processing facilities, and a mission control center. The launch pad and production complex for Rocket Lab's large reusable Neutron launch vehicle will also be located here in Virginia. It's yet another way that we're streamlining operations across small and large launch as we build out the future of responsive space from Wallops. Construction is currently underway on the Neutron production complex and its launch pad, right next door to where Electron is currently standing. In fact, while we're preparing to go to orbit today for our customer Capella at Launch Complex 2, across the world in New Zealand at Launch Complex 1, preparations are already underway for our next launch for another customer. Our teams at both sites are looking forward to a busy year ahead. Speaking about being stronger together though, today from Launch Complex 2, we are launching a dedicated mission for Capella, a leading provider of commercial synthetic aperture radar, or SAR imagery. SAR is a form of radar that is used to create 2-dimensional images or 3-dimensional reconstructions of objects, such as landscapes. We launched one of Capella's very first SAR satellites on another mission back in August 2020 on our 14th Electron mission called I Can't Believe It's Not Optical.
Our mission today would deliver 2 more of Capella's latest SAR satellites to orbit, enabling them to deliver the highest resolution, highest quality SAR imagery commercially available, empowering organizations across the public and private sector to make informed, accurate decisions based on what is happening across the Earth at any given moment. Here's more about Capella.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now T-minus 13 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting until liftoff of Rocket Lab's second Electron rocket from Launch Complex 2 in Virginia. While they're running through this video, we're going to take some time and answer your questions. So you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad as we continue through today's count. Couple questions coming in here. Jim Triss asking, we know when the launch of Terran 1 can happen. We're hearing they're targeting the 20, I'll double check, it's either 22nd or 24th here. As always, you can follow along over on the TLP launch calendar. That is where you can have everything. Yeah, it's right now no earlier than March 22nd. That is their current target for the launch of Good Luck, Have Fun, Relativity Space's first flight of their Terran 1. And that's what we're seeing here today. Paul is asking, one more. Marcine is asking, any known info on today's payload? So they're showing that a little bit on the screen here, and there's a live look at the pad. Today's launch is a dedicated mission for Capella Space, a leading U.S. satellite manufacturer and Earth observation company. It will deliver 2 of their synthetic aperture radar satellites that enable them to deliver the highest quality and highest resolution SAR imagery commercially available on the fastest order to delivery time, empowering organizations across the public and private sectors to make informed and accurate decisions. That's what they're launching here today. But as you're looking there, that's a live view of Launch Complex 2 on Wallops Island in Virginia. We're going to keep listening into mission control as we continue now T-minus 12 minutes and counting.
Countdown proceeding with the final pull for launch. Go, no-go sequence. Stage.
Stages go.
Avionics.
Avionics is go.
GNC.
GNC is go.
VCON.
VCON is go.
T1.
T1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
PLS.
PLS is go.
Mars CE.
RCE is go.
Mars Ops.
Mars Ops is go.
Mars 1. And NASA GSO.
GSO go.
And NASA RSO.
RSO go.
MM.
MM is go.
And LD Sub.
LD sub is go.
And NASA TD.
TD go.
The go, no-go sequence is complete. We are T-minus 11 minutes, 9 seconds and counting. We are go for terminal count at T-minus 10 minutes. From this time, the 3-word hold procedure is in effect.
So as we approach T-minus 10 minutes and 40 seconds, Mission Control are reporting all systems on the vehicle are healthy and will be proceeding with the remainder of the count. We are still targeting liftoff at 18:38 local time or 22:38 UTC. Now, the satellites we launch open access to space to improve life on Earth. We're also on a mission to open access to the space industry through our global education programs designed to support young people to reach for the stars no matter where they're launching from. We work with schools and other organizations to deliver education programs that inspire, inform, and involve kids in the future of space and STEM, from elementary through to college level. Our flagship program is, of course, the RocketLab Space Ambassadors, which Lakita has been involved in for over a year now.
That's right. As a space ambassador, I've received training and resources to travel to different regions, visiting schools and community organizations to share what I love about space, STEM, and my job right here at RocketLab. The program helps me get involved with my community and support young people in their journey to become the future of our industry. We visited with over 19,000 young people in schools across New Zealand, the United States, and Canada since the program was launched in 2021.
Thanks, Lakita, that's awesome. RocketLab is very lucky to have our space ambassadors nurturing the next generation of space with their enthusiasm for STEM. Thanks to them, we've added more programs to support educators and communities in many different ways, such as our Space Educators program, the patch of which you can see here, which supports teachers and education leaders to deliver engaging space learning experiences. One of my personal favorite programs is, of course, Rocket Club, an after-school program where young Rocketeers learn how to design, build, and launch their own model rockets with the support of our very own rocket engineers. We do have programs for kids aged 8 to 18 and beyond, and these are all offered through our network of over 500 Space Ambassador schools. It's free to register your school, college, or community group on the network so that you can access Rocket Lab's education programs as well. Go to rocketlabusa.com/education to find out more about Rocket Lab's global education programs and see how you can get inspired, informed, and involved with what we do. Thanks for joining us for this Stronger Together mission for Capella Space. We've come a long way from our first Electron launch in 2017. Rocket Lab started off with rockets as a small launch services provider, and we have now launched to space 33, nearly 34 times for our customers. Now we're also developing our large lift vehicle Neutron, and we have expanded our production capacity to in-space technologies. Through the acquisition of leading aerospace component manufacturers and the expansion of our teams across the United States, Canada, and New Zealand, Rocket Lab is making it easier than ever to get your idea on orbit. Here's Julie Kelly, Business Development Director, speaking to the exciting possibilities for Rocket Lab's Space Systems division.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We're at T-minus 6 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. And there's Julie talking a little bit about their next vehicle systems, but they love some music on it. So we're going to answer some more of your questions as we continue through today's countdown. If you're just joining us, welcome. You're joining us for our live launch coverage of Rocket Lab Stronger Together. And we are counting down 6 minutes, 34 seconds and counting until launch. The launch director gave the go to enter terminal count. On the right side of your screen, there's a live view of the pad as we continue. Everything is go for launch at 6:38 p.m. Eastern Time. Teams continuing through the terminal count sequence there, and we're going to listen back into mission control here in just a moment. And we wanted to make a couple points out really quickly for all of our TLP members. We love the support that you guys are. Thank you so much. Take a moment and make sure that you've joined over on the TLP Discord. Discord's free for anyone to join, but if you are a TLP member and your name's in green, make sure you join that. Link your Discord and your YouTube account, and that's how you get access to your behind the scenes info. We put out a members post on our YouTube about that as well, on how you can link those two. Also, take a moment and check out the new emojis in the chat. We got a couple specific ones for Rocket Lab here today, but we're excited to be having some more of those for you guys in the chat as well, as we now count down 5 minutes, 35 seconds and counting until liftoff of their 33rd Electron mission, the second Electron to launch from Rocket Lab's Launch Complex 2 in Virginia. If you guys can have questions, you can send that throughout the launch, and we'll work on answering those leading up to it and following launch. Just make sure you're tagging us at the launch pad. And if you do happen to be in the area, this would be your time to get ready to head on outside. You do have the possibility of seeing today's flight. This is the view zone. If you are anywhere from Pittsburgh to Trenton, Philadelphia, Washington, Charlottesville, Richmond, Raleigh, all the way down to Charleston, you do have the chance, if you have clear skies and a good line of sight, to be able to see today's flight. It's heading off pretty much straight to the east, a little bit to the southeast there. You can see that white line with the trajectory, but that's going to be your view zone for the first 3-4 minutes of flight. So if you're outside and you got decent view, I'd encourage you to head on outside now as we count down to L-minus 4 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. As always, here at the launch pad, we do at that final 2-minute mark a go, no go poll in the chat, so make sure you're ready for that. Let's listen back into Rocket Lab mission control as we go through the final minutes of flight.
At this point, Electron's flight computers take over the launch countdown. Our mission operators are reading the launch vehicle and payload as healthy and progressing through the count nominally. The weather is still looking good for launch at 2300 UTC. Moments after Electron has switched over to auto sequence, at about T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds, we should hear the call that LOX loading is complete on the vehicle. At 1 minute till liftoff, we can expect confirmation that the launch vehicle's first and second stages are pressurized for launch. At T-minus 10 seconds, you will hear our launch director, Joseph Carpico, make the iconic count to 0. Let's hand over now to Mission Control and listen in for these checkpoints. We will check back in with you shortly after liftoff.
If you're just joining us, we're listening into the launch control nets as we come down L minus 3 minutes, 10 seconds and counting.
GC countdown.
Go GC.
Stand by LD. LD GC countdown.
Go ahead, GC.
ECS disabled, pad auto sequence armed, pad ready for launch.
Roger, thank you. All operators LD on countdown. From now on, there should be no red flags on your critical LCCs. Beacon LD.
LD Vicon.
Confirm all expected flight computer ASGOs are green.
Confirmed.
Beacon, lock auto sequence and confirm.
Auto sequence locked.
All operators, we are go for auto sequence start at T minus 2 minutes. LD is go for launch.
T minus 2 minutes and counting.
Yes,
Launch
it's green
director is
for
go.
flight.
Launch auto sequence start.
Rocketload is complete. System is in research.
T minus 90 seconds.
Anti-geysering is disabled.
T minus 60 seconds.
Stage 1, Stage 2 press for flight.
T minus 45
Flowing
seconds.
converge enabled.
T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20.
T minus 20 seconds and counting.
Deluge activated.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Beginning pitch over.
And we're flying. Our 34th Electron vehicle is in the air and on the way to orbit after lifting off from Launch Complex 2. You can see the exhaust from those 9 Rutherford engines glowing bright as they propel the vehicle with Capella's satellites to space. Now that Electron has left the pad, its next milestone is max Q, the moment when the density of the air around the vehicle and its acceleration through that air creates the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will experience in flight. You'll hear Mission Control announce this
Stage 1
milestone
propulsion is
soon
nominal.
enough.
Approaching max Q.
He will count you in, remember.
Saying max Q.
As you may have heard from our mission operator's call there, Electron has now passed through max Q. The vehicle has throttled back up to a velocity of over 1,000 meters per second, just a fraction of its maximum velocity as it proceeds to orbit. We're about to reach another 3 milestones in the flight, and each will happen quite quickly, so we'll explain all 3 in one go. To start, we need to separate the first stage of the vehicle from the second and third stage, also known as the kick stage, which holds Capella satellites. The first stage is essentially a large fuel tank. Once that fuel is depleted, we jettison the tank so that the second stage can carry on to our orbital destination. To separate cleanly, we need to throttle down those 9 Rutherford engines on the first stage. This is known as main engine
Stage
cutoff,
one
or
propulsion
MECO for short.
nominal.
Once these engines have throttled down, the first and the second stage separate. Next, you'll see the vacuum optimized Rutherford engine ignites to carry the second and the
Please
third
stand by
stage
for MECO.
the rest of the way into space.
MECO confirm.
Stage separation successful.
Stage 2 ignition.
MECO, stage 1
Guidance
separation and stage 2 ignition confirmed and completed. Our 34th Electron
Stage two
mission is
propulsion
progressing
nominal.
nicely, and we're ready for the next set of checkpoints in flight on the way to delivering Capella satellites to their place in space. We are listening for the call to confirm that Electron's
HVB
fairing,
battery
the
discharge
pointing
nominal.
protective shell at the top of the rocket, has been jettisoned to expose the satellites in preparation for deployment.
Fairing jettison succeeded.
You can see it there on your screen. That's confirmation that the payload fairing has been successfully jettisoned and Capella's satellites are now exposed to space. Electron's second stage is continuing to orbit, traveling at speeds of over 8,000 kilometers per hour and currently at an altitude of over 100 kilometers.
That's another milestone checked off. The fairing is a millimeter-thin shell that serves a vital role, protecting the payload's inside from the awesome aerodynamic forces it sees as it breaks away from the atmosphere. Now that we're in free space, we can shed that extra weight to help maximize Electron's acceleration into orbit. Sitting on top of Electron, each payload might feel up to 8 times its own weight due to those
Stage
smooth
2 propulsion
accelerations.
holds nominal.
As part of the structural analysis team, our job is to prove every component on the vehicle is tough enough to withstand the stresses of all those forces, pressures, and vibrations on ascent, while still being a lightweight and elegant solution.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at a little bit of a
HVB discharge nominal.
little bit of a staticky live view of Rocket Lab as their second stage continues. Next major milestone is battery jettison. We're expecting that in just a couple minutes' time. This is where they're going to shed 2 of the batteries ahead of the other 2, taking over for the rest of the flight. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the subscribe button so you never miss another launch live right here on the launch pad. We're going to continue to follow along to give you a rough timeline of events. We are expecting a burn of the kick stage 53 minutes into flight. That's going to last just about 3.5 minutes, with payload deployment expected 57 minutes into flight. This time we believe Rocket Lab will be live for all that, so we hope that you'll stay with us, and we'll be answering your questions once we get into the coast phase, so keep those, and we'll be answering those live. But let's listen back into mission control as we approach battery jettison.
These battery packs falling away, so keep an eye on the right side of your screen. While you do that, we'll listen in from the call out from mission control.
200 seconds remaining.
Discharge nominal, approaching hot swap in roughly 30 seconds.
Throttling down.
Hot swap successful.
Stage 2 propulsion holds nominal.
Battery reducing control.
Electron's second stage is now running on a fresh battery. You saw it there, with the battery hot swap confirmed successful by mission control. We're in the stage 2 burn for a few minutes longer, but the next major milestone we have is SECO, or second engine cutoff. Similar to MECO, which happens before first stage separation, SECO is when the Rutherford engine on the second stage will shut down just before the second stage separates from the kick stage, which of course will continue on to payload deployment.
Now at 7 minutes and 10 seconds into Stronger Together mission for Capella Space, the second launch from our US launch site on Wallops Island, Virginia, with 4 minutes until SECO and kickstage separation. Electron continues to make its way to orbit, currently at an altitude of 6,000 meters per second and a velocity of kilometers of around 200 kilometers over 6,000 kilometers per second velocity.
Stage 2 propulsion still nominal.
If you're just joining us, we're T plus almost 8 minutes into our 34th Electron mission, which is going through all of the milestones well. It lifted off the pad on time at 18:38 local time and passed through max Q, MECO, first stage separation, and second stage ignition without any event. Of course, recently we've just had the battery hot swap, and we're just waiting on SECO, second engine cutoff, before the kick stage separates from the second stage.
As Felicity mentioned earlier,
mode.
coming up next, the engine on Electron's second stage will throttle down and shut off
Stage
before
two
the final
propulsion
stage
nominal.
separation. From there, we'll go into a coast phase in an elliptical orbit for
Guidance
about
and
40
terminal,
minutes or
22
so
seconds
until the
remaining.
kick stage ignites its Curie engine and propel the Capella Space SAR imaging satellites on board to their exact targeted orbit before they are deployed. Payload deployment will mark the end of the mission, which will occur at around T plus 60 minutes or so. So let's listen in for SECO and kick stage separation.
SECO confirm.
Nominal transfer orbit achieved. Stage 3 separation confirmed.
The space-optimized Rutherford engine on Electron's second stage has now throttled down, and the second stage has cleanly separated from the kick stage. The SECO and second stage separation milestones for this mission are complete. The next phase of the mission takes a little longer than that action-packed first 8 minutes after launch, but it's worth the wait. Electron's kick stage, with payloads attached, will now enter the coast phase that Lakita mentioned, as it propels the payload in an elliptical orbit towards the apogee requested by our customer, Capella. Once it has arrived at the requested orbit, the small but mighty Curie engine on the kick stage completes one final injection burn to raise the perigee of that elliptical orbit so that the orbit is circular. After circularizing this orbit, we can then deploy Capella's satellites and wish them well as they settle into their new home in space. We will have a simulated view of this payload deployment, plus live feeds from Mission Control, so stay with us on this webcast. We'll be back with you at T plus 51 minutes.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our continuing live coverage of Rocket Lab Stronger Together. If it was your first time here, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage right here on the launch pad. We're going to be staying live and answering your questions, so you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad so we can see those coming in, and we'll get ready to answer those throughout today's coast phase. Again, we wanted to point out, if you haven't yet, take a moment and join the TLP Discord. That's where you can stay up to date on everything TLP and be part of the Launchpad community. We're just setting up our live tracker here to count down towards deployment as we continue through today's flight. But another great looking flight of Electron, the second one from Wallops in Virginia. And we're glad to have you joining us all here today. And there you go, in the top right of your screen there is a countdown until payload deployment, T-minus 43 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. I believe that's correct. We'll make sure we're syncing that with mission control as we continue through today's count. But as I said, you continue to send in those questions by taking us at the launch pad. We wanted to bring it to your attention one more time. If you did want to pick up a TLP print of today's mission, head on over to tlpnetwork.com, click on shop. That's where you can check out a couple of awesome prints in our shop. Get 10% off of everything on the store using promo code LaunchDay. Super big shout out to our rocket chaser Sam for catching this picture out at Wallops, and again, thank you to RocketLab for inviting us to join them on site. Stay tuned for some more pictures and prints from today's flight on the shop. We're glad to have that new avenue to get those pictures out to you guys, as many of you have been asking them for a while, but we're glad to have you all joining us here. Lots of new members. I want to say a big thank you to Darmok and Helen for your gifted memberships throughout the launch countdown there. Really do appreciate it. That helps us continue to do everything we do. Lots of people asking about the Terran 1 launch with Relativity. We are counting down to that. At this point, they are currently targeting the 22nd of March for their next launch attempt. And of course, you can catch that right here on the launch pad. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our live launch coverage of that as well. Catching up on any questions here. Ted says, thanks for another feed, Launchpad. Hopefully Starship soon. Hopefully, our team is ready. We're excited to hopefully see Starship fly in the near future. We will be down live on site to bring you launch coverage and reaction coverage of Starship's orbital flight test. We hope you will join us live for that. We're only able to do that thanks to your guys' generous support through memberships, Patreon, and through the shop. So super excited to get to be down there for that launch. Still waiting on details on when that'll be. Biggest thing that SpaceX has said at this point, they're waiting on the FAA. It sounds like they're ready for everything else. So when we know more, we'll let you know more. But we hope that you will join us here for that live launch coverage. Luke, what are they sending to space? New satellites. Yes, so there are 2 satellites on board today's mission. They are for Capella Space. They are a U.S. satellite manufacturer and Earth observation company, and it is 2 of their synthetic aperture radar satellites that help them conduct high-resolution imagery of the Earth. That is what is on board today's flight. Dave, Starship's going to be mental. Michelle, Starship's going to be amazing. Absolutely. Let us know in the chat. Are you guys going to try to make it down for the Starship orbital flight test? Should we organize some sort of TLP meetup maybe around it if we can? So let us know in the chat if you're going to attempt to make it down there for that flight. Again, we're going to be answering your questions throughout the stream here through the Coast Face. So you can continue sending those in the chat. If you haven't yet, consider joining also over on the Discord. There's a bit of a watch party, it looks like, going on in general. We got Callum, Darmok, Marianne, Old Cop, that one guy, Windbreaker, hanging out in general hangout there watching today's stream. So thanks for being in there, guys. And we'll see you after the stream. We'll jump in for a little bit there for kind of a post-launch hangout. Manchester Moonlight, big question here. Zach, what are your thoughts on the Virgin Orbit announcement? For those that had been following along or those that didn't know, yesterday it did come out that Virgin Orbit has paused all operations. They have furloughed a majority of their staff and are currently seeking new funding opportunities. We just dropped the link in the chat for the article that we released on it. Unfortunately, I think it was inevitable. I think we've all been following along with what's been happening with Virgin Orbit. They haven't had a great success rate. They haven't had a paying customer in like a year. And they have a very large staff, over 600 employees. That's expensive. So without having frequent operational missions, they just bought 2 new planes as well. Unfortunately, they're in a tight place right now. I hope we'll see them come through. They have had successful missions, unlike some other companies like Astra that is currently fighting for their life to stay on the stock market. So I hope that they can do well, but we'll have to wait and see how this week and this month plays out. I think the fact that they got to the point where they did have to suspend operations and furlough their staff, we'll have to see. I just got confirmation. The last customer launch on Virgin Orbit was July 2nd, 2022. We are just a few months away from a 2-year gap in pay. That's a really long time not to get paid for this large of a company, especially a company that's looking at expanding to Brazil, the UK, and other places as well. So, of course, we wish them well. We know some people there on their team, and we hope that they all are okay and are able to pick back up and get some new funding. But we'll have to wait and see. This isn't the first time we've seen this happen with launch providers, especially in the small sat launch market. It is a huge market right now, but there are a lot of players in it. And I think Tori Bruno said it, and some other CEOs have said it. This is not a market that is going to sustain 10 or 15 companies. It's not. We're going to see 10, 15 companies come out, and in a few years, there's going to be, 3, 5, 7 remaining. Maybe if we get that high. RocketLab, they're firm in this industry, but they're now working on Neutron to get into the next level of industry. But we have Firefly, we have Relativity, we have Astra, we have Virgin Orbit, we have RFA, we have so many others working to come online for very small and small, that we're going to have to keep an eye and see how things go. Of course, we wish them all the best, and we'll cover all their launches. But ultimately, it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out. I've always found it interesting that there's Virgin Galactic and Virgin Space, or Virgin Orbit, and that they weren't just one. I get the idea of keeping them separate for one's like launch missions and one's like tourism, but you've got a lot of doubling of work in that sense of having to run 2 businesses rather than running 2 departments in one business. So we'll have to wait to see what happens with that. So great question there. Thanks for sending that in. If you guys have questions, send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. Starshine, yes, let's have a meetup, but with hats. What type of hats? Like baseball hats, or are you wanting like cowboy hats? We'll see what happens. Let's see. Andy's asking, where are we now? 3rd launch attempt. That is for Terran 1. We will be going for a 3rd attempt. Boyd is saying, why were operations moved to Virginia? This is just one of many launch sites that Rocket Lab has. So they have 2 launch sites at one launch complex. So 2 pads at one complex in New Zealand. They have 1 pad at one launch complex in Virginia. The reason Rocket Lab, and I saw some people talking about this in the chat earlier, Rocket Lab is a U.S. company. Yes, it's exclusively until this year launched out of New Zealand, but it is a U.S. company. It requires an FAA launch license for every launch, even when it's in New Zealand. But then it needs also a New Zealand launch license, so it needs both. Because it's a U.S. company, Rocket Lab can compete to have U.S. government payloads and U.S. military payloads like we've seen with NASA and things, but also future missions with the Space Force. If they were a New Zealand company, they wouldn't have been able to get all those contracts. This is also why Rocket Lab America basically has launched a subsidiary of, I believe it's Rocket Lab Australia, and that is so that company can then win government contracts as a local company, but it's still in head run by Rocket Lab America. So that's how you can see that kind of playing out. So they haven't moved exclusively to Virginia. It just so happens that the 2 launches back to back have been from Virginia. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Catching up on the chat and questions. Jim Treese says, Elon said there's a 50% chance of Starship launching successfully. Yeah, we're excited. It'll be interesting. Of course, we want it to go well. We're excited to see Starship fly, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And we're gonna do some polling on that leading up to it on the website, and of course during some of the live streams leading up to that to see what you guys think. So lots of Starship coverage coming your way in the near future once we're back down on site for that orbital flight test. For those asking why we have a stream scheduled on April 1st, it fit. We don't have a launch date just yet, but that is a placeholder. We wanted there to be a place that you guys could set up, get notified, so you do know when we go live. Of course, we'll have lots of announcements on our social media, here on YouTube and on Discord on when we're heading down there. We're going to have some behind-the-scenes footage for our members and some behind-the-scenes streams as well. And then we'll, of course, have the full live launch coverage for all of you right here. John's asking, did it launch already? Yes, we are 21 minutes into flight, and we're counting about 34 minutes or so until payload deployment here. Just making sure we've got that clock actually synced for what we're looking for. I think we're about a minute off, so we're just going to adjust that just to make sure we're on that timeline for when payload deployment should be occurring. Payload deployment expected 57 minutes, 38 seconds into today's flight. Paul, first came the tech bubble, next comes the space bubble. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Lots of questions coming in the chat. Great to have you all here. Jerry is asking, what happens to the booster for today's launch? So today's booster is not a booster they were going to recover. It did not have red stripes on it. They've still been learning how to do recovery in New Zealand, and they haven't been doing recoveries out of the United States yet. We did release actually an article not that long ago. Rocket Lab is considering suspending the helicopter recovery ops system and going exclusively with a water operation recovery where they splash down under parachute and then recover with their recovery ship. So we'll hopefully see another recovery attempt here in the next few flights out of New Zealand as they continue to see. But once they balanced out the cost of actually operating a helicopter fleet for recovery and the cost of just being able to repair the rocket, refurb it, and have extra water tightening measures on it, it worked out to be kind of a similar cost, but it's faster just to pull it out of the water if they have all that other stuff and refurbish it, than actually doing the whole helicopter process, because then you have to prepare helicopters, so there's a lot more time involved, where the recovery ship just goes and gets it, and then they start the refurb. Though the helicopter gets it back faster, there's more lead up, per se, to it, because even if they do the helicopter, they always still send the ship out just in case the helicopter doesn't work. So it's an extra cost nonetheless. If they were exclusively doing the helicopter, then that might be just a little bit cheaper there. We are counting down just over 33 minutes until payload deployment. Metal or Die, given all the companies, what do you think the chances of NASA's success versus SpaceX versus other companies? Ooh, that's an interesting multi-layered question. I think there needs to be, and we're seeing this happen up slowly, there needs to be a division of NASA being considered as a rocket company. They are very much a space science company. Yes, they have SLS, but if you look at their science division and their spacecrafts and stuff, they do incredible science at NASA, world-leading science. They're not a world leader in rockets. That's where SpaceX is. That's where Rocket Lab is. So it's definitely something that you have to follow along and see kind of what happens within that for it. So given all the companies, SpaceX, if Starlink works, SpaceX will do well. If Starlink doesn't work with Gen 2 because Starship doesn't work, SpaceX is going to have a hard time. Especially with Project Kuiper, if it works. So SpaceX has had the head game. They're ahead of everyone, but there's other people starting to catch up. So we'll have to see how SpaceX can diversify and really lock things down. So it's going to be a really interesting decade. I think between now and 2030, we're going to see a lot of change in the industry, and it'll be a lot of fun to watch and see what ultimately happens, if there's mergers, companies close, and how things go from there, and how companies adjust. Some companies might have multiple rockets now that they don't in the future. Others might introduce more rockets, so we'll have to wait and see how that is done. Let's see here. Lauren, if I wasn't old as dirt, I'd go to Mars. Hey, don't have to wait long. Hopefully 10 years or so. Might be able to still get there. And hopefully this time it's not one of those things you have to be like 25 and a test pilot to go to. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. That one guy, great stream. Thanks so much. Appreciate you being here. Jake is asking, what do you think of the new Axiom moon suits? Well... we're going to put a poll in the chat before I answer this question. What do you think of the new Axiom moon space suits? And we're going to keep it positive. Love them. They're okay. Not my fave. Or no thanks. We want to see what you guys say around these ones, because it's a big topic right now. People talking about the new moon suits for Axiom. I think there was a lot of clarification that happened yesterday. Collins Aerospace is working on a new spacesuit for low Earth orbit. This will be used at the International Space Station and possibly other space stations. Axiom is working on a new suit for what will be used for lunar operations. It is unclear if the Collins Aerospace suit will be used at the Lunar Gateway, or it'll be the Axiom suit used at the Lunar Gateway. But we'll have to wait and see. Seeing people in the chat, what do you think of the new Axiom moon spacesuits? Love them. They're okay, which was definitely spelt wrong. Not my fave, and no thanks. Quick poll in the chat there, wanting to see what you guys think about those suits. Brevity saying, I think the TLP get-together should be the manned Starship shot. We could do one around that too, absolutely. We do want to try to do a few TLP meetups a year, so if you are a member, make sure you stay tuned for those. There's going to be member-exclusive ones, and then we're going to do some that are open to the public as well, and we're going to try to do them that they're not only on the Space Coast in Florida. We are going to try to do a few around the United States and possibly over in the UK as well, as we continue to expand that coverage. We know we got a big chunk of our team over there, so I'd love to have a get-together maybe for the RFA flight, or if we see another Virgin orbit or something. So stay tuned for that. Coming up on 100 votes in the poll, what do you think of the new Axiom moon suits? 31% of you say love them, 43% say they're okay, 12% not my fave, and 13% no thanks. I have to kind of agree with that. I love the look of them. They look incredible. I mean, the outside of them was designed by the guy that helped design suits for All Mankind on Apple TV Plus. Not sponsored, but amazing show. It looks incredible. It looks futuristic. I love the black. There's two big problems. They will not be black. They will be white when they go to the moon because of heat and radiation and everything. So why did we get to see them in black? I don't know. Two, there was one hidden line in the press release, and we included this in our article. Due to them needing to be white for the moon, I'm paraphrasing here, due to them being white for the moon, the cover on the suit is to hide the proprietary space suit below it. So I'm not entirely sure, but to me that implies that they've almost put like a jacket or something on top of what the actual spacesuit looks like. It didn't have really any hard plastic or anything to it, which we were expecting, like some more rigid parts to the suit. So I'm not too sure what that suit's going to look like, and I'm not sure we're going to get to see it until it walks out on the moon. Still looks cool. Looks better than the old suits, I would say, in black, but we'll have to wait to see what it is like in white. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But I mean, new suit, that's exciting. It means we're talking about this new era of exploration. We're going to go live and work on the moon. That's even cooler. So we're keeping an eye on that there. And I think one of our team just brought it up on the stream. There we go. Statement from Axiom. Since the spacesuit worn on the moon must be white to reflect heat and protect astronauts from extreme high temperatures, a cover layer is currently being used for display purposes only to conceal the suit's proprietary design. So the shell, the cover that we saw on the suit yesterday, I don't know if we're actually going to, like, it's not that we're going to see just a white version of that, I don't think. So we don't know. We haven't had an answer on this. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that once it actually gets to the moon here in the near future. Let's see. Metal or Die is asking, how many years do you give it before the companies that are struggling now just get swallowed up by the likes of larger? I think there's a few companies that might get bought out. I think there's a few companies that might merge. And there's some companies that I think that might be successful in their own market. I don't think there's something saying that you couldn't have like a RocketLab of Europe that maybe isn't operational in the United States at all. I think that's very possible to see. I think we'll see that in other places. I mean, look at ISRO in India. They've got a number of vehicles. They don't launch anywhere else. Now that's a government program, but or government funded. But so I think there's some flexibility where we see other regions coming online. Right now, the U.S. is really the main force in the space industry, other than Russia and China, which aren't going to ever be open. So we'll have to wait and see how that progresses. But I hope some will merge. There's some amazing technology being worked on by a number of companies: Firefly, Relativity, RFA, Skyrora, so many others that are testing different types of innovation that you wouldn't want those to go to waste. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Daniel's asking, is this Neutron? Yes, that is a Neutron emoji. Black rockets on dark mode on YouTube are a little bit harder to see, and Electron likes to have a black rocket. But unlike Axiom Space's new spacesuit, they're actually black when they get out to the pad and get used. So let's see, catching up on your chat. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat there. Bajarn, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. How big is this rocket compared to a Falcon 9? I do not have a model of both of them that I could show you just yet. But a Electron rocket, if it's on its wheel base, you can push it manually by hand with one person. You can maneuver it on its wheels. It's fairly large. You can't hug it around, but it's a good size. A Falcon, you could not do that. So Falcon is a multiple times larger for it, actually. If you head over to the website, I believe we have a little bit of an information that shows you roughly the size of an Electron rocket. So that'd be the best option there. Someone saying the color of the suits is just for the aesthetics. Exactly. Actually, there we go. There's the height of Electron. It's 18 meters tall. It is not 0 feet tall, believe it or not. It is 18 meters tall, and then whatever the correct conversion of that is. And it's 1.2 meters in diameter, so 3.9 feet. So it's not huge, but it works, and it's able to deploy quite a bit of satellites there. So excited to see that. Starshine, let's make our own spacesuit company. Classified. Ginger, Zach, what's the news on the new space stations being built? Not much new. Axiom Space continuing to work on theirs. Starlab is working on the ideas for their kind of modular single part stations. China is considering doubling their, well, originally they were going to double their station. Now it looks like they're just going to add a module or two. So they're preparing for what their next phase of expansion looks like. The ISS is being prepared, plans are being prepared for how it will be deorbited. The United States government is looking at spending $1 billion to deorbit the ISS properly and safely to drop it into Point Nemo. So we're watching that closely. It's a lot of money just to deorbit a station, but they don't believe that the Soyuz will be able to do it, or they might not have Soyuz at the time, or that the Cygnus version vehicle will be able to, and Dragon doesn't have engines that it could do that type of burn. So they're looking at what other options there are for things that can get up to station, dock, fire those engines, and deorbit it successfully. Catching up on the chat here. You can keep sending in those questions by tagging us at the launch pad. Ricky, yeah, ISS will be down by 2031 at the current timeline. Should have people on it till 2030, so we're keeping a close eye on that. Jim Triss, I read that in the next few days, the crew for Artemis 2 will be announced. April 3rd, the crew of Artemis 2 will be announced at Johnson Space Center in Houston. We will be covering that live right here on the launch pad, and we have some exciting follow-ups with that as well, so stay tuned on that. We're waiting for some confirmations from NASA on just what we can actually talk about with that, but we're excited for that Artemis 2 announcement to be happening. We finally get to know for the first time in 50 years who we're sending back to the moon, just moon orbit. We're not landing just yet, but I am super excited as a Canadian that we are finally sending the first Canadian into lunar orbit, and the first person other than the United States into lunar orbit as well. Keeping an eye on Rocket Lab's feed here. They've been having a rough day with their feeds as they continue to go through their count. Looks like at this time that they've actually fully lost their feed. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and we'll bring that up once we actually have a live view back from Rocket Lab as we continue through it. It looks like it's been a little bit of a rough day for streams here so some of the quality of them. They've been dropping their feeds, so internet issues. Technology is fun. We did also, separate note, just have confirmation that the Centaur stage of Vulcan is currently being tested out at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, so we are keeping eyes on that. That was an update from Tori Bruno just a couple of minutes ago, so we'll be following that closely, and hopefully getting Rocket Lab back up here, as we are now just under 20 minutes away from payload deployment. Metal or die, will Canada ever make a rocket that runs on Timmy's coffee? No, and that's because Timmy's coffee isn't the best coffee anymore. I know. I might not be Canadian anymore for saying that, but sorry. It's Omatic. Why are they trying to deorbit it? So the International Space Station was designed to last until the mid-2010s. It has been extended, obviously, quite a bit now, but the modules, especially on the U.S. side, they have kind of best before dates for crew living in them, and they are passing that, and they are completely just not going to be safe for humans. They don't want to verify the seals and things like that. So because of that, they are going to actually be deorbiting the station here in the next little bit of time. But it looks like Rocket Lab's having a little bit. Oh, looks like we might have them back. It looks like Rocket Lab's back. So we're going to be keeping an eye on it. Our clocks are a couple seconds out of sync, but we're just about 18 and a half minutes from payload deployment. It's the kick stage of Electron, currently passing over the southern tip of Africa. Get them to donate the ISS to TLP. See, I would, but it costs $55 million a person to get there. And we need like 4 people to do that. So if we have any angel investors watching that'd like help TLP get to the next level, get in contact with us. We can set up some sort of partnership, and maybe we'll take over the International Space Station. But there's no point in having the ISS if I can't get to it. So we'll wait and see what happens. Metal, pull your Canadian card. It's in the mail. Great having you all here. If Tim's hadn't brought back chocolate eclairs, I'd never go. I don't know the last time I had a Timmy's. I don't know. I think the last thing I had from them was trying their Timbit cereal, and that just didn't work. For our American friends and international friend, Timbits are donut holes, but that's what Tim Hortons called them. Tim Hortons is a coffee brand chain up here, kind of like a Dunkin' Donuts or a Baskin Robbins, I think. Not Baskin Robbins. What's the other one? There's another one, but... Catching up on the chat here. If you're just joining us, welcome. We are 40 minutes into today's flight of Rocket Lab's Electron rocket, carrying 2 satellites into orbit. We're just over 16 minutes away from payload deployment. Old timer, 15 mil for the Zacta Space Fund. I will gladly accept, set up a way for you to make that donation. Send me an email. John at home, does the Dragon crew experience a drop feeling during re-entry just prior to parachute deployment? So Crew 5 was actually talking about this. If you head over to the Launchpad News channel, we streamed the briefing with them just yesterday, I believe it was, which they were talking about their return to Earth. And they talk about how when they were coming home, you really start to feel the G's, and they actually call them out, just so everyone's aware, because not only do they come back to 1 G, they experience over 3 to come home because of re-entry. So they're going from 0 Gs to 4 times that, and then settles back down to 1G when they're actually home. So they were talking about how they called it out at half a G, and that it was like an elephant sitting on their chest, and it just kept getting heavier and worse as they continued along. They've obviously trained for it, so at that point they don't do anything. They're along for the ride. They focus on their breathing to make sure they don't pass out, and that they're safe, and they just go for that ride. Those few minutes there's not much they can do but hang on. No, not even hang on tight. They're pressed to their seats. So they did say once they actually got to, you hear noises of the parachute deployment, but you're still just so adjusting to the G's, you don't really notice a lot of it, and then you get into the water and you feel like a little bit of the swell circling that occurs while they're sitting in the water. But if you look at this last time recovery, it was less than 30 minutes from splashdown and they were on the boat. So very interesting to see that picking up speed. Thanks for being here, Denise. Appreciate it. And thanks for watching. Still in Leathers asking, where is the Electron vehicle supposed to come down? So the first stage came down in the Atlantic. The second stage, I believe, probably is going to come down somewhere in about the Indian Ocean. I don't have a full fact on that. I would have to double check that. But based on where separation was, how its altitude, yeah, probably somewhere in the South Atlantic into the Indian Ocean. And then the kick stage will go off and actually do payload deployment. Sorry for all those in the chat that want coffee and donuts now. My apologies. Metal or die, what do they have for seasickness when that happens? Nothing. They just, they are strapped in their seats. They do not have really access for anything. They're still in their helmets and everything. They do have access to the stuff in their pockets, but it's not in a case where they actually are able to do anything. They're not going to eat or ingest anything. They'll get on the recovery ship and go from there. And honestly, if you made it through Earth re-entry, I think a little seasickness isn't going to be your problem. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Catching up on your chat here. Dave is asking, is this a 3D printed rocket? No, it is not. Thank you, George. Krispy Kreme, that's the other one. Barf bags and a helmet. Ooh, that sounds like a combo no one wants. Metal or die. Space has left the chat and coffee has entered. Yeah, it seems like that is where we gone. Taking a look as we end out that poll, what you think of the Axiom spacesuits. 273 votes. 40% of you love them. 35% they're okay. 13% not my fave, and 12% no thanks. That's interesting to see. Thanks for those that participated in that poll. If you guys have polls you want us to do, you can always send in those as recommendations during streams. And appreciate you all staying with us. Still over 850 of you here. Thank you so much, as we now are just over 12 minutes away from payload deployment. The next major milestone that we're looking for is going to be the kick stage Curie engine ignition. That is set to occur in about 9 minutes from now, where it will perform a burn. The burn's going to last just over 3.5 minutes, and that's going to finalize the payload for deployment. Deployment expected at T plus 57 minutes 30 seconds into flight. Rudolph, the space where you can scratch your nose and eat a donut. Exactly, at the same time. For it, see some people out talking about Vulcan testing. We are aware that that is happening. ULA does not have a feed for their Vulcan testing, so it is not something that we can actually, unfortunately, show you, but we are monitoring that as they continue there. We are working on trying to get cameras down there and expanding our team, working with the U.S. Space Force on that, as that Vulcan is not on the NASA side. That is on the Space Force side, so it is a bit harder to get onto that side of the base. But we are working on that with our rocket chasers, and we appreciate the Space Force's support in doing that as well. Catching up here, just over 10 minutes away from deployment. Can take a time, answer the last couple questions before we get into these final stages of today's flight. As always, just as a reminder, don't forget, join the Discord and check out the shop while we have this time here. Anyone that places an order while we're live, we'll do a shout out during the coast phase as well. But don't forget, promo code LaunchDay gets you 10% off of everything there on the shop. Alexander's asking, do you think NASA or maybe even SpaceX will make a new International Space Station? No, and the reason why is they've both said it. So the International Space Station was a joint venture of the United States, Canada, the UK, Japan, Russia, and a bunch of other people. The new space stations are going to be private commercial stations. So we see Axiom Space is working on one. We've got one from Blue Origin with some other companies. There's one called Starlab. I'm blanking who it's by, unfortunately. I apologize about that. So there's other commercial stations, and what they're going to do is basically you can lease module space. Almost like an Airbnb model. So if you need to be up there for 6 months for an experiment, you rent out a shelf or a pod or a whole module, and that's how things are going to run. And then they're also going to open it for private enterprise as well. So NASA will lease and book space aboard other people's space stations. But it really doesn't make sense for government agencies anymore to launch their own space stations. It is an older idea. It's way more expensive. You need your own launch vehicles, your own modules, where if NASA took all of its budget and focused on the science, there'd be some incredible stuff on top of what they are already doing. Just a couple minutes away from that burn to finalize the orbit for deployment. This burn would be set to occur at apogee, pulling up the perigee. To finalize the circulation of that berm. Going back to that question, SpaceX making a space station, they have Starship, and Starship in itself has more livable space than the International Space Station just in one ship. So really, by launching one Starship, they've launched an International Space Station. So they're not going to have necessarily stations. They might eventually have things where starships can dock together, things like that. But the actual concept of station, SpaceX, we were talking about this in the Discord a few days ago, and love to hear your guys' comments on it. SpaceX is going the route of a airline manufacturer, not an airline company. So they manufacture it. They do sell tickets, but they sell them privately, where they're not going to be, the American Airlines or United of space. They're going to build spacecrafts and lease them out possibly to other companies, providing the service, but they're not necessarily the ones that are going to sell tickets to you and me directly long run. Was a concept that came up in our Discord. I thought it was interesting. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on it as well. One of our team just did remind me, SpaceX did apply for the commercial LEO destination contract, which would be one of these destinations, basically stations in orbit. But for them, it would just be Starship. It wouldn't need to be an elaborate station. It would be, a Starship or two type of thing. So we'll see what happens. Lauren saying her guess, any government station would be the future moon base. Could definitely see that happen. Brian's asking, is it possible to show a camera review with the kickstage engine firing? I've never seen one, and it would be interesting. Unfortunately, we don't control Rocket Lab's cameras. That is all on them. So we get to see what they let us see. So we don't have that. Lauren, relativity, yep, we will be covering Terran 1's third launch attempt, currently targeting March 22nd. Hey, Preston, it's going good. How are you? Catching up on today's chat there. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat. We are about 6 minutes away from payload deployment of the 2 satellites on board. We're 3 minutes away from that kick stage Curie engine burn to finalize our orbit. And we will listen into Rocket Lab Mission Control for an update when we get to that point. At this time, they're just continuing to play some music as we approach that time of burn. Some very loud music. Lauren, maybe a SpaceX FAA LEO license might be for a tanker model. So they would need an FAA license for all Starship models. Whether they launch them from the United States or not, SpaceX will always be required to have an FAA launch license, just like Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab's a US company, but when they launch from New Zealand, they still do need to have an FAA launch license. Preston, any new launch companies you're keeping an eye on? There's a bunch in the Europe and the UK. We've had the privilege of talking to some of them, and we'll have some more interviews coming up in the near future, but there are so many things coming out of the UK and Europe right now. Really exciting to see what they are all doing as they continue to make that part of the world a launch faring area as well, under agencies and private companies on a lot of different scales of vehicles as well. Let's see here. Launchpad, what time is the launch on Wednesday? Currently, we are... Let's see if we have a window yet. I believe it's similar to the last two windows. We haven't really had a long time change just yet. But let me confirm here. It is... Oh, slightly different. The launch window is... Oh, it's going to be evening, it looks like. The launch window would be from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern time. So a slightly different. Yeah, not an afternoon. We've slipped into evening for that next Terran 1 launch window. Be really neat to see it launch right at the opening of that. You might have the sunlight effect, but we're going for a night launch this time of Terran 1. Just about a minute away from that Curie engine burn. We're going to be keeping a close eye on that, and we'll listen back into mission control here in just a moment. And just over about 4 minutes to payload deployment. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. And we always answer your questions through the coast phase, so we hope you'll join us here. And make sure you join us over on our Discord. That's where our TLP community hangs out in between streams, and we'd invite you to join that. That's free for anyone to be in, but it also is a place that if you're a member of TLP and your name's in green, maybe you're gifted a membership, you can link your YouTube and your Discord together and get access to behind-the-scenes channels. We have that posted on YouTube and in Discord on how you can do that as we continue towards payload deployment here. In just a couple minutes, we should be seeing that Curie engine burn beginning at about 40 seconds from now. Wait to hear if we get any updates actually from Rocket Lab Mission Control about this time. They're still playing some music while we go there. Sonic 1, I think I said that right. Thank you. Zach, you're doing a great job. Thanks, I appreciate it. Really do appreciate that. Lauren as well, doing a great job and doing solo. Appreciate it. It's fun. They're long streams sometimes, but Artemis was a good rehearsal, so we enjoy it. And I'm even more excited. We've got some new people joining the team. A bunch of you have filled out applications. If you are interested in joining the team as a rocket chaser, a journalist, a researcher, definitely take a moment, fill out those applications. We're going through them now, and we are basically doubling our team globally, and we're super excited to do that as we continue our mission of informing and inspiring explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And I'm not going to be solo online for too much longer. I'm excited to introduce a new host to you guys named Dakota. Super excited to have him joining the team, so stay tuned for that. You're going to see him in the near future. Let's see here. We should be now into that Curie burn. That should be underway at this time. That burn lasting just about 3.5 minutes from now. Or through now, with payload deployment coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. We're going to take that deployment timer off the screen here just because we are getting close to that, and then we'll wait for actual confirmation of that payload deployment separation. Lauren, Artemis is where most of us learn the existence of the red team. Very true. And Sharon, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here. I'm not going anywhere, but there's so many launches happening in the world. It's actually amazing because we're going to have multiple hosts so we can have multiple streams running at the same time. So it's super exciting that we have to be in that troubled position of needing multiple hosts to be able to cover multiple streams, because we're not launching one rocket a day anymore. We're launching multiple, and that's super exciting. And then we've got space on top of it. And trust me when I say I brought someone in that's knowledgeable and will be able to answer your questions as much as I do, they probably know even more than I do about stuff. So super excited to have them joining here, and we're excited to have more of you join our team through the news team, the crew, shop, social media, tons of things. We can only do this thanks to our volunteer team of amazing people. Let's listen back into Mission Control.
RocketLab's 34th Electron mission, Stronger Together. I'm Likita Satrasala, and this is Felicity Powell, and we're glad you could join us this evening. Our mission has been by the book so far, with the vehicle lifting off at 18:38 local time or 22:38 UTC from LC2 on Wallops Island, Virginia. Electron passed through max Q, MECO, first stage separation, and second stage ignition before reaching the T+3 minute mark.
At T+6 minutes 16 seconds, the vehicle completed a successful battery hot swap, and then followed up with SECO and separation of the kick stage at 9 minutes 14 into the mission. The kick stage proceeded on its first pass of an elliptical orbit and is now completing that coast phase. Up next is payload deployment of those 2 satellites for Capella Space. Let's take a look at this animated simulation of what that will look like and listen back with Mission Control.
And you're seeing on your screen now an animation of what payload deployment will be looking like here. Unfortunately, no live cameras for today's deployment. 20 seconds now away from it here. And we're just waiting for payload deployment confirmation. We should be seeing that any moment now. This is an animation of those 2 satellites on board the kick stage. You can see them there. Running just a couple, the timelines are running. There we go. Payload deployment confirmed. Have not heard anything from Mission Control, but that confirms it. If it was your first time here, though, welcome. We're glad to have you here. So many new people joining us. I want to give some shout-outs to people that were watching in today, to Levi, to Dakota, to Jay, to Sharon, to Heather. It's great having you all joining us here today. We're going to keep doing that on future streams. But if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth right here on the launch pad. Because here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And this concludes our live launch coverage of Rocket Lab Stronger Together. Make sure you follow us over on Twitter, TLPN_official. If you took photos or videos of today's launch, you can send those in the chat, and that's going to do it for us here today. I'll see you guys over on the Discord. Feel free to join it. But for now, from TLP HQ, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.